Welcome to the Single Father Podcast. I am your host, Kendall Donaker. This podcast is dedicated for anyone out there who's dealing with mental health and fatherhood. You'll hear about my struggles, my defeats, my victories, my highs, my lows, my triumphs, my tribulations, and everything in between. I like to call this a collection of journal entries into my struggle and adapting to single fatherhood. Without further ado, let's take a look inside my journal, the Single Father Podcast. Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and otherwise. It's Father DZ here, as I'm so trying to get that nickname going for myself. I have a amazing guest on today's show. Her name is Dr. Juliet Anton. She's a psychologist, She is also the co-founder and CEO of Ask Doc UK. It's a mental health app. Please go check that out. You can look at their page at Ask Doc UK on Instagram, Facebook. Dr. Juliet was so gracious to speak with me. We spoke a lot about a variety of different topics, with me really just trying to get a better understanding about mental health, life, and trauma. She specifically specializes in trauma, and I wanted to, as someone dealing with trauma myself, I wanted to get her opinions on how to repair ourselves and how to navigate through trauma, and really just explore different tips and on relationships and parenting and mental health as it relates to trauma as well. So she was just an amazing person to speak to, and I'm super happy that I got her on the show, and I hope as time goes on I can get her on again. Guys, I'm recording this later. This is a very early episodes that this was recorded, and the sound quality right off the bat is not great. And through magic, I've tried to enhance the audio a little bit, so hopefully it sounds okay. But yeah, the first couple episodes is not great, but as time progresses and the episodes continue, they only get better and better. If you look at our latest episodes, I can promise you that they're on par to excellence. So just bear with us with the sound quality. And I really hope you guys like this episode. If you came for Juliet and specifically the trauma topic, I hope that you'll stick around and check out later episodes. All I do is talk about, mental health, parenting, fatherhood, and share a little bit about my personal experiences. I mean, this is kind of, the podcast is really meant to just for me to chronicle my experiences and have this be my own personal journal. So, welcome to my journal. Thank you guys so much. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and without further ado, let's talk to Juliet.
Well,
So you're on the right track.
Yeah, right. And kind of just forwarding the subject a little bit. So I'm a co-parent as well, and that was a really challenging task. Not only because, and the show's called VentPack, and I'm venting to you at this point, but with my parents splitting up, I always promised myself that I would never take that route. It would never happen to me. I would never do that. And then here I am, I have a kid, and it didn't work out with me and her mom. And not only that, the nasty divorce that I experienced with my parents when I was younger, I'm now going through a nasty battle with my child's mother. And it was so traumatic for me because I really removed, after high school, I really removed myself from my parents' situation. And I took a step back and kind of just ignored it, right? And now I'm a grown man and I'm dealing with the same thing. Right when I stepped into the court with the judge in front of me, it was so incredibly painful. And I, just moving forward, I kind of thought to myself, well, I got advice too from my dad. I said, what would you do? And his advice was, if it's not about your child, you don't have to talk to her, forget her, that type of thing. And for me, it really wasn't the right advice that I thought I wanted to hear, because I felt like it wasn't the right route. And so instead, after, this long battle with her, I kind of just sucked it in and I apologized to her. And I said, I think we should just work it out. And I took her out to dinner. And now a year later, her and I are practically best friends. We laugh and we talk together. And because I try to explain to people, I really can't think of anything more painful than having my child 50% of the time, because I want her every day. But now that I'm so friendly with her, with her mother, I can FaceTime her anytime I want. I get updates, and I think, wow, this is how it's supposed to be, right? You obviously don't have to be best friends. And after I drop her off, she very well might say, fuck that guy. But at the same time, we're so incredibly good that it's beneficial for me. But a lot of parents don't have that. And I feel like that can be traumatic for children. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I think I don't want to kind of label it with an older generation and a younger generation thing, but I think it's really a lot of the time what we might see in a relationship is anger as the kind of initial emotion, but below that, sometimes there's hurt and sadness there. And it's the reason why I say that is because I think with anger, it can make the situation worse, for example. But that's not to say that it's not an emotion that we shouldn't experience. Anger in itself is also a communication in terms of how we're feeling. But what could happen is that when, let's say, we've got a couple and they're really angry with each other, and that potentially has caused them to kind of separate. What can happen there is that we then tend to avoid having that communication again in terms of mending that rupture, because that can, loads of things can come in the way, but one of the things can be ego. The other thing is that they may have felt that the other person has really kind of misunderstood them, that they just, they don't see it working. And I can understand all of that. But I think personally, it takes a lot for someone to kind of mend that relationship, because it could be multiple reasons, Kendall, but I think to kind of that, I guess with the mending, there's something about that the rupture is too painful. For some people, they feel that the separation is better for them, and that means that they're more in control of, let's say, the situation, themselves, how they want their future to be, for example, etc. But for others, it might be, especially in kind of what you've described to me in terms of what you've gone through, and then there is this situation that potentially that your child can go through that. You've been there, you've done that, you know how painful it is. And for you, it was more important that you are able to kind of, be adults and work through this, so that at least she gets the best of both, rather than half of one or half of the other. So I think, again, this is what I mean by it's our experiences that make us who we are. We can't, as much as we want to kind of deny it or kind of move away from it. And I can understand, people have really kind of horrendous and painful experiences. So I understand why people would want to avoid that or move away from that. But at the same time, it's what we learn from those experiences that allows us to kind of become unstuck and move on forward. So I think for you, despite experiencing what your mum and dad had gone through and how you've managed, you've learned so much from that experience too. And that's what's helped you kind of make that informed choice of how you want to move forward in terms of your child or, your partner, and so that's kind of what I would say is really important, in the sense that it's not just about what we've experienced, it's also about what we've learned from our experiences and helping us, our kind of future decisions, be informed by that. Have I answered your question there? I think I went on one.
No.
That happens a lot, by the way.
Me too. So it was. I thought that was a beautiful answer. And one of the biggest things I was excited to talk to you about is, speaking of learning from experience, is relationship. Trauma can really affect relationships, and whether it be co-parenting, whether it be, just a general boyfriend, girlfriend, husband and wife, divorce. I think it can really affect relationships. And I wanted to ask you, what have you experienced within speaking to some of your clients, or kind of just your own personal growth yourself, about trauma and relationships? Because I'm really excited to hear your thoughts, because I think that's really an important part of kind of how we move forward. Because a boyfriend might have trust issues towards a girlfriend because of what he went through in the past, and I think that's a lot of reasons why it doesn't work out. And I kind of just wanted to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I think kind of from my experience, my personal experience, so something that I have always, again, the impact of parents, something that I've always kind of grown up with is that so with my parents, they're both from Sri Lanka. They're both kind of Tamil, so it's like a subset of people in Sri Lanka, and but the difference between them was that my father was Christian and my mother was Hindu. So there was kind of the kind of mixing religion wasn't, that kind of, in those days, the best idea. But they met quite young, and kind of since they kind of moved from Sri Lanka to the UK, that's just the love that they've had for each other is something, I've always had around me. And since my dad had passed, and then it was just mum, so we kind of crack joke, for example, in the UK, it's quite common to kind of remarry, for example. But my mum, in her mind, it's one love, it's your first love, and that's the only love you have. So that's where kind of she's coming from. So actually it's been beautiful but difficult at the same time, because then that means that we've kind of, we've only got mum, and we're, our siblings are kind of working around her in terms of helping her manage. But that's also something so it's a bit of a clash, actually, because our siblings, we are growing up, with all this kind of importance to our first love, and we kind of created this kind of fairy tale in our minds about, the person that we're going to be together. And I mean, touch wood, thankfully, I've been okay so far. So my fiance, I met when I was 15, and he proposed this year. So we've been together about just over 13 years. So touch wood, it's worked out for me. But at the same time, it's that, for me, I see that as a luxury, because I've seen a lot of my friends go through kind of breakups. I've seen a lot of, my siblings, they've had their own fair shares. And I mean, I feel like a little bit of a kind of a culprit, because I've not necessarily experienced what a breakup feels like. But for me, every argument, every fight that we have is almost like, oh my God, is this it? Is this it? But I have no idea what it feels like. But that kind of anticipation anxiety is something that I experience. And, it's just so painful. And yet, something that I really do admire of people who have had relationships and, have walked away from the relationships for whatever reason. It's the strength, the resilience that these people can show is something else. It's almost, it's amazing. I can't really put words to it, but it kind of, I think it takes a lot to be able to, learn from our relationships or walk away from our relationships. And then despite having the past experiences we may have had in previous relationships, to then, take that risk again and start something new with a new person. I think that's amazing, to be honest. And that's the one thing that I would tell everyone, in that it's important to feel valued in our relationships. And if we don't feel valued in our relationships, that can really impact our mental health. And I'm not saying leave that relationship, but what I am saying is think about it. It's you wouldn't want your friend or your sibling or a loved one to go through this. So it doesn't make it okay for you to go through this, because, you are as equally important as well,
If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast, with everything you need in one place. Let me explain. Anchor has the tools to allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything you need in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
I feel like that must be some anxiety for you too, just to say, hey, if we're fighting, because you mentioned the fairy tale, right? The first love is a true. It kind of a little bit of anxiety to feel like if we're fighting, oh my gosh, it's supposed to be my true love. But yeah,
it is scary, but I think that's the thing. That's my upbringing in terms of, that one love, that first love, that has to be it, isn't it? And I'm aware that I have these assumptions of, if you see someone, if you feel, for example, with my fiance, I've been, together with him for this long, and whenever we do have arguments, I'm always like, breaking up isn't an option. And that can be quite scary, I think, for someone who's with another person who's saying, that's not an option, because it's unfortunately it's not. But that's not to say that I will be in a relationship, for example, where I'm not feeling valued. It's just to say that actually it's important that we talk things through and we kind of come to kind of a middle ground. And if we're not able to come to a middle ground, then we can think about, separating or going our separate ways, whatever. But but separation being the first option, I guess personally, I'm not sure if I believe in that, if that makes sense. I think if we really do, love or care for someone, we wouldn't want to lose them. We would want to kind of negotiate and meet somewhere in the middle, if that makes sense.
Right.
But that's a personal experience, and I'll totally kind of hold my hand to that. That's my personal experience, especially having experienced that loss for me very early on. That's something that, it was painful. It's not something that I would want for me to happen again. And so for me, relationships are so important. And I, even if it's, we've got two different opinions, the way I would want to keep it is that we're either civil or we're on an understanding where we can have space for each other. It's not to say that we have to kind of be on opposite poles or antagonistic, if that makes sense.
No, I really completely agree. And, I think, people, obviously haven't experienced a loss like yourself, which is, I'm really sorry for, but I think people who experience those type of pain and trauma really value the importance of the relationships in their life. And they really make decisions of, who I want to, you speak about being valued. I really think that's important too, because, I think it's just, especially for men, when we don't really value relationships that much. I think when you get older, like me, I'm 25, and now I'm like, okay, everything that I did before was just stupid. Now I really want someone who values me and I value, and the importance of a relationship. And I want to see the beauty in someone, and I really care about women. I have a daughter. So all that's so important in a relationship. And I completely agree. I don't feel like giving up right away is the best option. I think they're, true to form with my child's mother, like that was so, I did everything I could not to have that end because it was so important for me to, like, that promise I made for myself, this can't happen to me. But moving forward, as you mature and progress, it was more important to me than just to have a good relationship and be civil than it was to just be angry. Because sometimes it's very surreal for me. You can learn everything about someone and then just no longer in your life anymore. So, you know what I mean? But
of course, yeah.
Within speaking to you, I think you are really incredible. You seem like a really strong, beautiful, intelligent woman. I am so happy to have spoken with you, and I know that you probably have some. I mean, last but not least, I wanted to hear some of your advice on going through trauma and getting through it. For anyone listening and who recognizes how strong you are, I'd really love for them to hear your opinion on dealing with some of those mental health issues or trauma.
I think trauma can be anything, Kendall. I think it's whatever happens in life, anything can be traumatic for anyone. And if there's one thing that I want anyone to kind of take away and remember is that whatever happened in that moment, you've done the best you can, like even be it for me, be it for anyone else, because what we can do is we can sometimes tend to kind of beat ourselves up for how we managed the situation in the past, and we could have done it better. But I think it's really important to remember that in that moment we have done the best we can. That circumstances change, what we learn can change, the people around us can change. But in that very moment, what's important is that however we've dealt with any situation, we've done the best we can in that moment. So that's what I want, anyone kind of listening to this in terms of trauma or mental health, that even if you do have a mental health problem now in terms of, anxiety, depression, and you're finding it really difficult to manage, again, I want you to remember that, you might not be managing the best way, but there is no one best way. Everyone is different, and you are doing the best you can to manage, and that's what's important. I think that's the one thing. I think it's important to kind of have that kind of self-love and self-compassion towards ourselves. Interestingly, that's something that we find more difficult, showing ourselves love. But that's not to say that we can't do it. But it's the one thing I had my supervisor tell me, actually, and it really stuck with me. And she said, we are nothing without our health. And I mean, I'm saying health in broad terms, be it physical, be it mental health. We are nothing without our health. And as much as we want to kind of be there for other people, it's important that we are there for ourselves, and we're taking care of ourselves and our resources so that we can be there for other people, right? So that's also something, that I would want people to kind of bear in mind, that that our health is very important. We are nothing without our health, and also that, however ways we've managed our traumas, we've done the best we can in that moment to manage that trauma. Does that make sense?
Beautiful answer. Really was.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kendall, for having me on and, sharing your experiences with me as well. I think for me, one of the reasons why I've chosen this career, and I absolutely love this career for that, is that I feel very honored when people are comfortable enough to share their kind of deepest, darkest, most painful experiences. I think not everyone is able to have that kind of moment with people. And for me, I'm very grateful for my clients, for people who have approached me, including you, Kendall, for this podcast and everything, to be able to approach me and to share, what you've gone through and what you've experienced with me. Honestly, I feel very honored, and I'm grateful that we've had, our paths have crossed like this, and we're able to, do something like this together.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy you say that. It might be the accent, but I wish you were my psychiatrist. So. I'm really thankful for you as well. By the way, how's America is doing very bad on the pandemic, but how's the UK? How have you been managing?
Terrible, terrible. I think just generally, I don't think anyone knows how to deal with it or what's kind of going on. And again, this is what I mean. We're all trying to do the best we can. It's not great, but we're doing the best we can. And I think that's what's important. And I think, yeah, looking out for each other, doing the least that we can do in terms, and that's what I mean, looking out for each other. It doesn't have to be loved ones, you know, anyone, to kind of know that everyone's okay. And if someone isn't okay, just kind of reaching out to see if they are okay. I think that's all we could do, really, isn't it? I think I wanted to say the beautiful thing about this, but I think the thing that I really do hold on to is that we're all in it together. You know, there is no kind of separation here. We're all in it together. We've got each other. And I really, really hope that we're all able to kind of use each other to kind of get through this difficult time as much as possible.
Definitely. Absolutely. I can't agree more. Yeah, my Nana, she FaceTimes me probably about like 15 times a day, but I answer just because I can't be there to see her. So every time I answer, even if it might be too many times in a day, but I do it anyway. Where can people find you online?
Where can people find me online? So I am kind of all over social media. My name is Dr. Juliet Anton on the social media. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Yeah, just if there's any kind of questions, support, concerns, just, you know, pop me a little message and I will get back to everyone as soon as I can.
Perfect. Well, you are the best, doctor. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed speaking with you. Congrats on your potential. When's the wedding?
Well, actually, it was meant to be in a week time, but we decided to postpone because we thought, you know what, it's not fair on the guests to kind of come over and yeah, it's
right.
fair. So we were like, you know what, give it some more time. Hopefully we'll have everyone round. So hopefully, fingers crossed next year. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Well, I'm so excited. Thank you so much. It was really an honor.
Oh, no, that's okay. Thank you so much, Kendall, for having me. Thank you.
All right, doctor. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care. All right, then. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, you know, I want to thank Dr. Juliet Anton for being on the show. As you can tell, you know, she really gave some great advice and tips on how to move forward and experience some of those stresses in our life, like mental health, anxiety, depression, and trauma. And, you know, if there's anyone that you feel like needs to hear this episode, or you might want to share, subscribe, listen, comment, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Reach out to her if needed as well. Again, she's in the UK. You can tell by the wonderful accent. But yeah, I mean, it's really nice to have people come on and kind of give many different examples and interpretations and how we can deal with things like that and spread mental health awareness. Once again, guys, under this episode, there'll be a link to support the podcast. Any small donation helps. It allows for a higher quality audio, and also we're creating a mental health app, and that will be more details on that will be announced shortly. Please follow our Instagram. You can get, you know, some latest updates on the app and more details about different guests that are coming on as well. Thank you guys so much. You know, it's like I always say, this is really cathartic for me. And if I could just vent about anything, it would just be, has been just an amazing experience for me to just talk to people who kind of just let me and my listeners know that you're not alone. So with that being said, we vent together, we stand together as a pack. VentPack.